Hey everyone! Today I'm going to demonstrate one way of simplifying the piano arrangement for most jazz standards. Before we dive in, it would be super helpful if you can read chord symbols and can play any 4-note chord. I'll mainly be using the root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th, and you will notice that sometimes the 7th is replaced with the 6th. The purpose of this approach is to practice splitting the chord tones between the two hands while also incorporating the melody. I believe this lays out a solid foundation on which you can build and add other chord extensions or double other chord tones. For this exercise, I'm going to use Duke Ellington's tune Sophisticated Lady. While I've also provided the music notes on the staff here on my left, the main objective here is to develop the ability to visually map out the chords on your keyboard without thinking too much. Don't get down if you're not picking it up super fast at first. Just keep at it, practicing and learning, and eventually you'll start making those connections quicker and easier. Okay, so before we kick things off, I've set up some ground rules to make things easier while still keeping the piano arrangement sounding nice. First rule is to use only 4-note chords. You'll notice that sometimes the melody and certain chord extensions will break this rule. Embrace this slight increase in complexity, as altering the melody would detract from the purpose of this exercise. While excluding chord extensions could simplify the arrangement further, it often results in a loss of the song's distinctive identity. Therefore, I recommend incorporating chord extensions whenever feasible to maintain the integrity and character of the piece. So let's take the first chord as an example. As you can see, the melody is a G flat, which is our flatted 9th, and this creates a 5-note chord. So F, A, C, E flat, G flat, a 5-note chord. Another example would be this B minor 7 flat 5, which as you can see has 5 notes as well. This is because the melody is the root. So in most cases, if not all, whenever the melody plays the root, basically you'll have the root played twice. Here in the left hand and here in the right hand. So you have 3 more notes to add, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. This will result in a 5-note chord. And so on. The second rule is to maintain a balanced distance between your hands. While you shouldn't crowd everything into a tiny space, having too much distance between your hands can also pose challenges. This wider gap may make it harder to see everything you need to play, and it could also affect the consistency of your sound across the keys. This is also a good rule for each of the 4 notes as well. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but for now we won't delve into the exceptions. So, maintaining a balanced distance between the hands. Not too close, not too far. Okay, so if we take a look at our first chord again here, the F7 flat 9, if we were to arrange these notes as close as possible to one another, it would look something like this. Now, playing an F7 in your left hand and the flat 9th in your right hand kind of beats the purpose of splitting the chord notes between both hands. And playing, let's say, 3 notes in your left hand and the other 2 in your right also beats the purpose of this exercise, since what's the point in playing this chord with both hands, since you can play most of it with only one. So, and also this way, if you try to play the notes as close as possible to one another, you kind of lose out on the textures the piano has to offer, because you get different sounds here, or here, here, and so on. So basically, we want to capture as much as possible within the confines of this exercise, as much texture and color as possible. And this is the reason why I moved it 1 octave lower. It sounds more rich than this version. The third rule is to try to avoid playing really low notes on the piano. When you go too low, the sound can get all muddy and unclear, which makes your harmonies not sound as crisp as you want them to. So if we were to move the root and the seventh in the left hand one octave lower, it still doesn't sound too muddy, but if we play both hands together, kind of creates a slight discrepancy in the unity of the sound, let's say. And although this is, I'm sure there's a right context to play this isn't that one. So I'm going for something different here. Don't place chord tones. This is the fourth rule. So don't place chord tones above the melody. By taking this approach, you risk obscuring the original melody, effectively altering it, which breaks rule number 1. That's because higher notes often catch people's ears and could end up sounding like the melody instead. Yeah, so this is another reason why I didn't move, for example, root and seventh. I didn't move either the third or the fifth above the melody. See how this grabs your attention, or this? So basically we want to incorporate the melody and the accompaniment of it in the same arrangement. Okay, so if we take a look in the right part of my screen here, when you examine the lead sheet from a real book, you'll observe a staff containing the melody along with chord symbols placed above it. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's essential to understand the meaning of each chord symbol to effectively interpret the musical piece. The melody and the lowest note, which is the root of the chord, are predetermined. The only point where you'll get to be creative is when you're adding the other notes that complete the chords. Although the root is determined, you can, as in the note of it, you can shift octaves, you can switch octaves, sorry. You can move it, for example, from here, here, and so on. But the melody, I keep it in the same register as the original composition was written in. Remember the rule about having a balanced distance between the two hands? It's also important to avoid big leaps between consecutive chords. Maintaining a reasonable distance between chords ensures smoother transitions in your music. Now, for this exercise, I usually try not to double up any of the chord tones, but sometimes I break that rule to add more depth to the sound if the context requires it. Okay, so off the bat, let me simplify this process even more for you. Let's consider the 4-note chord. So we have root, third, fifth, and seventh. If the root is predetermined, then we have only 3 combinations, 3 possibilities: root and third, root and fifth, root and seventh. In most cases, you'll notice that I use root and seventh because, if possible, this offers like a good distance between the notes and accesses, in some case, different registers of the piano. Root and fifth is my second choice. And my third one would be root and third. I prefer it to play like this. But there are cases where I'm forced to play one next to each other. But those are pretty few cases, not so many. Okay, so if left hand most of the time plays root and seventh or root and fifth, then my right hand would play either third and fifth or third and seventh. So all of the time there's a common note between the two versions. And if we take a look here, you can spot where there's a root seventh or root and fifth pretty easily because of the distance between the notes. So for F7 flat 9, root and seventh, the other notes are assigned to the right hand. Root and seventh, other notes to the right hand. root and seventh. Now the melody also plays the root, and this sequence, if you take a look at the chord symbols here, you'll see that it moves down chromatically. G flat, F, E, E flat, and all of them are dominant chords. So basically you can keep the same configuration in your hands and just move down a half step. Root 7, 3rd, 5th melody. Now, in the case of A flat major 7th, I wanted to avoid doubling the 7th, which is also the melody, and this is the reason why I used root and 5th in my left hand, 3rd and 7th in my right. Otherwise, this doesn't sound bad, but I prefer this one. And now there's another chromatic sequence here that moves down, starting from A flat major, A flat 7, G7, G flat 7, F7. But in this case, the melody is played. The melody uses the 5th, so I use root 7, 3rd, 5th. Root and 7th in my left hand. Okay, so this is one case where I used root and 3rd in my left hand. This is an exception to the rule, although the distance is pretty big. I get that bass note here, and the other notes are sort of evenly spaced. So if you can't stretch that much with your left hand, feel free to move the B flat 1 octave higher. This also sounds well. Root and 5th in my left hand, root and 5th, root and 5th, root and 7th, root and 7th. Yeah. Moving to the second volta. So here we have a flat 6 chord, and we have the 6th here in our melody. So root and 5th in my left, 3rd and 6th instead of 7th, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Here you could have also used root and 5th, or depends on what you prefer. Now the B section of the tune starts off with a G major 7, and if you look at the left hand, you'll know what type of voicings I used. So root 7th, root 7th, root 5th, root 5th, root 7th, and so on. Yeah. And for most of the time, we have a chord tone in our melody. This is our 5th. This is our root. This is our 7th. This is our 9th, 3rd, and so on. So it's basically pretty straightforward once you go through a few tunes. Let's just play this. So you see, I'm playing here in the lower register, not this low, but here, and the notes are quite spaced from each other. Notice I'm not playing root and 3rd here. Now, these two measures are exactly identical to these two. Here we have more chord movement activity than before, but it's the same principle as before. So root 7th, we have the melody playing the 3rd. See, basically, so the right hand here plays an inversion of what it played, or what it played here. So I had in the beginning of the B section, and now the melody plays a third instead of a fifth. Sorry. This is the chord that we played in the beginning. So yeah, it's all pretty straightforward. The C section is basically the A section with this ending, with the melody slightly varied here with an A instead of playing these two notes, an A flat, sorry. And yeah, this is pretty basically it. So if you have questions, maybe you encounter other exceptional cases that I haven't covered here yet, please write them below in the comment section. If you have suggestions of how I could create these tutorials in the future, or what other topics you'd like covered, please leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching.